Welcome to the Build Better Blueprint, the podcast where we discuss the foundations of real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Join Christian Cardamone as he shares insights, strategies, and stories that will empower you to level up your business, your lifestyle, and your impact. Let's build a better blueprint for success, starting now.
Hey, this is Christian Cardamone. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Build Better Blueprint. And today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Matthew Cox. He's a fellow GoBundance GoBro, and here to talk to us about real estate and how he's doubled his portfolio in the last year. Looks like he's a renaissance man across all boards of real estate, which is exciting. We're going to dig into that. And just here to learn about his path to success and how he may be able to help you forge your path to success in real estate. So thanks for tuning in. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Christian, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey into real estate, and how long you've been investing, and a little bit about that path.
So my background in real estate began, I live in Manhattan now, New York City, but it began in Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, but my first job in real estate was in Portland. I was working for a real estate investment company up there, calling on foreclosure properties all day, every day. When I was there, didn't get really into investing myself. I kind of just worked in the space and brought deals or, called on deals for my boss. I did buy my first rental property when I was there, but never really it was kind of something, okay, I'll have one of these and it'll be a little kind of side deal, and maybe it'll give me some money down the road. Then when I transitioned into another just corporate sales job when I was still in Portland, and while I was working there, of course, I'm sure many people can relate to this story, but COVID hit, and my sales job was selling to airports in the U.S. and Canada. And as we all experience, the airport aviation world completely shut down. There was only
totally.
Essential flights were the only things operating for a bit. The airports were in survival mode. So I was like, man, I gotta find another way to make some money because I'm not gonna close any deals for the foreseeable future. These airports.
What were you selling to the airports?
I sold aviation data, so there's a lot of use cases for it. The way you would see it, like as an individual, when you have a flight somewhere, you open up your app and it says you're at gate B13 and you're leaving on time, or you're delayed. You're getting those updates. That's kind of the individual user use case for what we sold there.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So I was there. I was like, I'm not going to make any money. COVID's hitting. I don't know when flights are going to come back. So that's when I got pretty serious about real estate. And I had a ton of free time because I wasn't talking to customers. They didn't want to talk to salespeople. They're trying to stay above water. So I consumed just an absurd amount of content, podcasts, books, everything I could get my hands on. And I started buying deals, and I bought that one when I was at my previous company, but then, in 2020, I started pretty seriously buying rentals. I bought my first duplex, and then I started doing a bunch of BRRRR deals that year. And after I bought my first one, I was just hooked. I loved everything about it. Structuring the deal, running the numbers, going to look at properties. I love learning in general, but I was like, wait, I can make money doing this, and I actually like doing it, which wasn't really something I'd experienced before. So that was kind of how I got my start, if you will. Kind of dabbled back at that previous job from 2016 to 2019, but really my kind of story as an investor began for the most part in 2020.
That's awesome, man. And so in 5 short years, basically 4, just turned 2025, you built a pretty massive empire, which is impressive, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So it just makes me think, like, how bad are you kicking yourself that you didn't get in 2016 when you first dipped your toe in the pool? It's like, it's awesome that you had that kind of genesis from cold calling people on foreclosures, and then they probably give you like a good basis, right, for you to start at least of understanding. So that was that kind of marinating the whole time.
Yeah, to answer the first part of your question, I think about that all the time. When I was at that company, I had just incredible access to all these deals. And I was like, man, if I had just bought like one or two of those every year. But my mindset at that time, I was in like my, what mid, I just turned 35. I was in like my mid late 20s.
Yeah.
It was just like, real estate. It's something my boss does. Like I can't buy all this
It's like for
stuff.
old people. Yeah, you weren't there yet.
Yeah, like my boss is super rich. I don't have that much money. Like I can't
Yeah.
can't buy real estate. And in hindsight, I should have been buying a couple deals a year. I had incredible access to off market, way below market value properties, but I just didn't have that mindset at the time. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Um, well, I forgot, but that's a good point though. It's like mindset is if you weren't even thinking that that was even a possibility then when you're basically had the keys to the castle the whole time. But that shows like the importance of mindset in thinking big and aiming high because for you it was just a job you were just working at that point in time, and then sounds like years later you had that kind of awakening like holy shit man, this is actually the path that I want to take. So that it sounds like maybe even subconsciously it was kind of a baseline there that was there the whole time, which is really cool.
Yeah, when you're going through it, it's you said it, Christian. Mindset is so important. My mindset at that time was just my boss does this. He's super wealthy. I can't do this stuff. And then, it speaks to when you start educating yourself, whether that's like I said through books, podcasts, whatever, and you start breaking it down and you learn like this is how you buy real estate. This is how you go get money from a bank. This is how you structure a deal. This is how you underwrite. This is how, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. And you don't, when there's this idea when you're starting out that you have to learn every single thing and you have to do every single thing perfectly. It's like, no, you just need to take action. Your first deal you buy might not be a home run. Singles and doubles in this game are perfectly good. You hit a few singles and doubles a year for a while, you're going to be sitting pretty. But where people struggle is just doing that first one and taking action. I mean, I know people that have been talking about buying their first deal for five plus years, and there's always going to be something in your head that you think I can't do this. Something's going to go wrong, and the truth is something's going to go wrong
Yeah.
always, but a lot of things are going to go right also. But nothing can go right if you don't take that first step.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. And it's like the beauty of this industry in real estate is as time goes by, everything compounds. So even if you do just make that first acquisition, even if it's just a shit show, like if you can just survive, keep your head above water, like duration is the key to success in real estate. And so in longevity, so just getting that one and just holding it for 5 years will pay massive dividends. So it's a game about tenacity, for the properties that don't perform. But when you do find the ones that do perform, then it's really a game of abundance. And I think it just goes back to like, what we were talking about before with mindset is such an important piece of the puzzle. We're not out here curing cancer. It's not rocket science. It's a game. And as soon as you learn the rules of it, you can participate. And the barrier to entry is so low that it just, to me, I don't understand why more people don't pay attention because there's so many ways to get involved and so many ways to make money in this industry. And we can talk about that a little bit more because it looks like you've done a lot of it. So you do a buy and hold, you do flip, and you do wholesale. Tell us a little bit about kind of your current, bread and butter, if you will, for what you like to do to A, generate income, and then B, what you're investing in. Or if you're just an investor in whole, tell us about kind of your current real estate strategy and like, the state of the union of what your current holdings are.
hmm Currently, I have 35 units, about 9 million and change in total real estate. When I started off, my entire model was buy and hold. I did BRRRR deals over and over. That was all the rage on like bigger pockets and stuff back then.
Yeah.
Rates were at three and a half, 4%, and you could just rinse, repeat this process. And for those who don't know, it just means you buy a property that's usually a little beat up. You buy it for below market value. You fix it up. You get a renter in there, start generating rent income. Then you refinance it, get all your money back, and repeat the process. So that was my entire model. I didn't start flipping houses at all until 2023, and that was kind of a result. The way I look at my business now, and I'm sure a lot of investors can relate to this, is you need a way to generate now money, and then you need a way to generate long-term wealth. These days, a lot of the rental properties I buy, they may not make anything the first year or 2 years, right? I think they're going to be wonderful investments 5, 10, 20 years down the line. But I live in New York City. It's not cheap, so you can't live. The rentals I brought early, or that I bought early on, that are 3% rates, or those things cash flow like crazy, and I'm able to generate some. I never call it passive income. I know that's a buzzword. It's not
Yeah,
passive, but I'm
totally.
able to generate income from those. But stuff I buy now, it takes time to stabilize the buildings and to get to a point where they do start generating income. So that's in 23, which is when I quit my corporate sales job and went full time into my business. That's when I started flipping houses and wholesaling as well. So yeah, the past year, 24, I went from 15 units, or excuse me, might mess up, 16 units, I think, to 35 units. So I'm trying to strike that balance. I want to buy as much long-term rental real estate as I can, but
Yeah.
in order to do that and also, live my life, be able to travel, go out to eat, live in New York, all that good stuff. That's where the house flipping and wholesale comes in, because that generates your day-to-day money as well.
Totally. And I love that because that's such a like a full circle strategy because you have to generate the income in the meantime because people think I want to get into real estate, but they forget the real estate investing, the term investment kind of means long term. So these, you can buy a great deal now, but then you can't go back to your apartment in Manhattan and expect it to pay the rent with positive cash flow. So you have to build a portfolio big enough to do that. In the meantime, you still need to eat. So for the folks listening at home, I think wholesaling is such a unique just proposition to me because you can get into it with basically no money. Yeah, I mean, you need a phone, and then you need to understand your way around a deal and how to value a property. So explain that a little bit, because a lot of folks, have the excuse of like, I can't get into real. It's like a rich man's game, or I don't have like a rich father or grandfather who's going to give me a loan. So tell us like basically like a blueprint. That's kind of the basis of this show, of a couple of things that you would do if you want to get into real estate investing. I think you're a perfect example of someone who, let's just say you wipe the slate clean, you leave your corporate job, you have no income. I need to generate income because once I have done that, I want to then invest in real estate. So tell us the 5 things that you would start to do from day one to give someone like a peek behind the curtain of what you did.
Yeah, so for people who are trying to start out, I'll give you two quick ones.
Mhm.
Christian, you said it. Wholesaling, it is the lowest barrier to entry when it comes to real estate, and that's part of why sometimes wholesalers get a bad reputation, is because people will put properties under contract that they don't frankly know what to do with. I mean, we've all been beginners at different points. I've probably done it at points where we all start from a place where we don't know everything, and maybe we aren't experts, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But if you're wholesaling, I mean, the premise, just a high level of wholesaling, is you go put a property under contract and you find an investor who would want to buy that. So I go put property under contract at 200K. It's worth 400K after repair value. I find an investor who will pay 250 for it and will do all the work to do the flip. I pocket that 50 grand in the middle. And Christian, like you said, that requires basically no money to do it. I mean, you might need to buy a list of phone numbers or something like that.
Hmm.
But that's the quickest way to bring value. I mean, if you can, what I tell people is, if you get really good at finding deals, true deals, the money will always find you. I mean,
Hmm.
you could, Christian, you do real estate. If somebody came to you and said, "Hey, Christian, and I don't know what space you're in, but let's just say I've got this house under contract for 250 grand, and you can take a look at it and say I can pour 70 grand into it and sell it for 550." Of course, you would do it. You're happy to pay that person.
Hmm.
So it's a simple game. If you bring value to people that have the money, you don't need to have the money yourself. So finding the deal um, is everything. Like if you can do that, you will get into this business. The second thing I would tell people, if you're so that's kind of on the flip and wholesale side of the business. If you
Hmm.
want to just get into owning long-term rentals, there's all these different strategies out there, and I use a lot of them. But sometimes you don't need to overcomplicate it. If you're a brand new investor, you don't have a ton of money, you can go buy a fourplex with an owner occupy loan, put 5% down, sometimes as low as 2.5 or 3%. But if you just want, and you can do that once a year, use your owner occupy loan, put 2.5, 3% down, and you can own 4 units, and then do it again in another year. You own 8 units. I mean, so there's ways, to your point, to get into this business that don't require a ton of money and that start compounding on top of each other pretty quickly.
Yeah, I love that. And really, I think it's just about like education because if you distill that down, you could become, a mogul in a very short period of time because you can start generating tremendous wealth just wholesaling. And really, the only thing you need to wholesale, in my opinion, is good communication skills. And then you need to be able to use your calculator. So if you can find a deal and build a rapport with that seller, get it under contract, and then market it through your network. And a lot of times, if you get a good enough deal, a lot of real estate brokers will just take it off your hands for you. I know a lot of brokers that are listing stuff kind of subject to taking ownership, um, helping wholesalers get their inventory out in the market. But yeah, you're right. There's no shortage of people that will engage you if you have he who has the gold makes the rules. So if you got the gold, the world's your oyster. And secondly, that I believe it, correct me if I'm wrong, you might know, but I think in the last 2 years, Fannie and Freddie just opened that up to where you can buy multifamily property up to 4 units as owner occupied. And that was like a game changer. If you can, the buzzword house hack, buy a primary residence with very attractive financing terms, then yeah, then you've got three other units there potentially paying your mortgage. You're probably positive cash flowing depending on your market, building equity, and then you can do that once a year. You know, you could have a pretty good portfolio within a short period of time. So depending on your level of commitment to it, not everyone wants to house hack. Not everyone wants to live in a multifamily. Some markets don't have a lot of multifamily. That isn't kind of like investment quality, but it's one path, right?
Yeah, and if you're young, like you said, Christian, if you're, it's all about, how much tolerance do you have for living in close quarters. You can do it with a single family home too. I know plenty of people that went and bought a 5 bedroom house and rent out the 4 other rooms, and they more than cover their mortgage payment, and that's a big springboard toward financial toward wealth as well as you entirely cut out your housing costs. That's the
Mhm.
biggest expense line on most people's budgets. And if you completely cut out your cost of housing, all of a sudden you freed up a bunch more cash to go buy more real estate or do, invest it however you want.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. So tell me, I mean, man, do you have double double the value and double the units in your portfolio in the last year? That's amazing. So obviously now you are someone who thinks big, who comes from an abundance mindset, especially just joining this new tribe of millionaires that we're in. So tell me what your goals are for next year, how you plan to achieve them, and we can hold you accountable to that. So when we have you back next year, we can see how you're doing.
Yeah, please. I love that stuff. I'd love to come back on and uh, recap where I'm at. But yeah, my goals for this year, I'm always hesitant. I mean, I doubled my portfolio last year. I'm always hesitant to put like a number of doors I'm trying to buy in a particular year, just because I think that can lead you to buy crappy deals sometimes. If I said right now, I want to have 150 doors by next year, I could do it. They might all lose a bunch of money every month and might bankrupt me, but if I wanted to have under 150 doors, I could
Yeah.
probably do it. So I try to think of it more from a process standpoint. I have a very, I've gotten much better at defining what my buy box is. Um, so I just want to buy everything that comes on my plate through that. And so how do I generate more deals that fit my buy box? It's aligning with the right people. One of my goals this year, specific goal, there's a guy I know who's huge in the real estate space who I've had a few calls with. I really want to do a deal with him.
Mhm.
That's a specific goal for me. I also I've kind of progressed from when I started out buying single family and a duplex here and there. This past year, bought a lot of like fourplex, sixplex type stuff. In fact, I went on another podcast the other day and put it on air. I said I'm going to buy a 30 plus unit building this year.
I
Of
love
course,
it.
it's important to find the right one. I'm not going to buy, or maybe the first one that comes across my plate will be awesome, but that is a huge one for me. Is I want to get up into that bigger space where you start getting more of those economies of scale, where you can grow your wealth much quicker up in that larger multi space. So those are two specific goals. I have people I want to work with, and I want to do at least one deal of that size.
Awesome, man. Totally within reach, 100%, and especially part of the community that you just joined. For those of you that don't know, I'm speaking about GoBundance, which is just an amazing network of individuals, high net worth individuals who are doing great things. A lot of giving back, a lot of investing, a lot of teaching, based around family and finance, and it's been a great experience for me so far. So I think that's absolutely something that we'll be talking about next year when we circle back. So tell us, if you're from the West Coast and your initial investment started over there, now you're in Manhattan. So tell us where you're investing right now and what kind of stuff are you buying? Like, what is your buy box right now? And so, for example, that 30 unit, is that like a, Midwest Sun Belt type property? Is that a luxury complex somewhere in the Southeast, or what's that look like so we can kind of manifest that?
Yeah, it's funny. So, like you said, I live out here in Manhattan. I've been here about 3.5 years. But my entire business is located in Oregon. I should say I do a little bit of business in Washington, but it's pretty. My whole rental portfolio is mostly kind of in the Salem, Oregon area, which is where I grew up, where my
Okay.
parents still live. As far as buy box, I mean, I've just kept buying there. I would venture out to other areas of Oregon. I've thought about long term doing some stuff out here. But overall, I'm a believer in kind of buying what you know. I thought about, New York, could I buy here? And it's like, do I want to? I don't know anything about this market. Could I learn it? Yes. But what's the point when I already have all this expertise and I have all of my infrastructure from contractors, um, people on the ground, my market knowledge, all that stuff is in Oregon. Um, so I plan to continue. I'll probably venture out from Salem some and cover more of the state
Mhm.
with my portfolio, just because there is, it's just more opportunity, and I can still kind of leverage those same systems and stuff that I've built in the state. But yeah, I'm gonna keep buying in Oregon. And then I want to buy larger stuff. I don't buy like the luxury. I'll try. I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate. I try to buy stuff that's value add. So I don't want the big, finished stuff that a lot of the institutional buyers are looking for. It's kind of the steady income. We want to buy stuff where I can either raise the rents immediately. Those are my favorite deals, is where the place is already in good shape. I don't
Yeah.
have to do barely any repairs. I just buy it from a landlord who hasn't kept up with rents, which is a pretty common thing. A lot of people bought real estate 20, 30 years ago, and they don't frankly care about keeping up with market rents because they're, for various reasons, they're retired. They say, "Oh, my mortgage gets paid, whatever." So you can find a lot of opportunity there. And then sometimes I will look for stuff that's got a little hair on it that needs some repairs. But the whole game is being able to raise the rents. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, totally, dude. And you said a couple of things that I want to touch on. One, like, mom and pop is like the the best buzzword in our industry, because that is the last frontier of opportunity, in my opinion, because there's more folks out there than you think that, like you said, they bought an asset 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's always worked well for them. It's easy. They're not, sharks out there trying to keep up with everything every year annually, and it's always done well for them. And maybe it's a family asset. And then when they're ready to dispose of it, sometimes it's just the right phone call at the right time. And then that is where you can strike gold a lot of the times. And then another thing that I think is really important that I think you're really wise to point out is playing in your own sandbox in your backyard. It's so, I guess, the value to having infrastructure, and you're a perfect example, dude, because you've got the whole country in between you. So there couldn't be a better example of someone saying, I'm living in New York and I'm operating in Oregon. The value of trusted relationships, knowing the market. I'm sure you could probably on a napkin figure out what a property is worth based on the neighborhood someone's telling you and the size of it. Whereas you're right, like Manhattan is just, it's a different animal altogether there. So there's a lot of value to that, and I think folks can get caught up pretty easily in the shiny objects. They might go online and find like an influencer who's like, Section 8 houses. You can get 30 units, dude, like that in Grand Rapids or Detroit, and you could put them all into Section 8, and you can have this guaranteed income, and that's that works for a lot of people. And I'm not saying anything against that, but that's where a lot of investors can get burned. They can get in, they can lose a tremendous amount of money very quickly because they get in over their head. And I think in the market that I'm in a small market here in coastal North Carolina, and I've had some properties out of state, and I've always kind of come back here because I can maximize this just because of some of the inside baseball that you have there that you just don't get somewhere else, and it takes years to build that. And that's got intrinsic value, in my opinion, for an investment.
Totally agree. It's peace of mind. It's knowing that when I make a decision, it's from a place of knowledge. I mean, I've fallen into the trap. People call it like the cash flow trap. You go to these random markets in, rough areas, and on your pro forma on paper, it's like, oh my God, this is going to cash flow like crazy. But then you don't account for vacancies, and you don't account for tenants damaging properties. And I mean, a perfect example, I bought a property in Kansas City a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It did pretty well. It was a lot of like Section 8, but it was so much mental bandwidth and headache, and always wondering, is somebody going to stop paying their rent tomorrow? Is somebody going to tear up the unit and leave? We actually offloaded that one, and it cash flowed pretty well, but we offloaded that in 2024 just because it didn't fit our long-term vision. I mean, a lot of people, when you're starting out, I was this way. The only metric that a lot of people care about is cash flow. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how a lot of people enter real estate, because they're trying to replace their income and, maybe get out of a W-2. And, of course, how do you do that? It's with cash flow. Yeah. But as you're in it longer and you're able to think a little more long term, cash flow it's great, but they're building equity. That's where you get that long term wealth down the road. And the way you do that typically is by buying in, good sought after markets where you can raise the value of the property. That house in Kansas City, go back to that thing will, it'll probably be worth damn near the same amount it is today, 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's a huge point to make, is while you may have the cash flow, the market is so important to choose, because you may have there's ways to make money in real estate. You have cash flow, you have appreciation, you have some of the tax benefits, you have the ability to force equity, and then you have the ability to raise rents over time. So there's these big 5 levers you can pull. But if you're not in a market where you have the opportunity to pull all 5 of them, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice as an investor, because like you said, you could buy that house in Kansas City, and this is pretty typical in a lot of the Midwest, in these markets where it's just a cash flow play. And so 5-10 years down the road, you're going to sell it, if you can sell it, for probably the exact same dollar amount that you bought it for. And that's just based on historical performance. Obviously no one has a crystal ball, but that's a really important thing. So I can never really wrap my head around why people aren't buying in areas of opportunity where there is appreciation. Our market here, and granted, we're like a beach town with the university and a historic riverfront, but appreciation here has been just tremendous. In the last 10 years, things have doubled, tripled, quadrupled. So I don't understand why people wouldn't factor that in. I think it doesn't necessarily mean the real estate has to be more expensive.
Yeah, and I get everybody. One of the great things about real estate is there's different lanes for everybody depending on what your goals are. Like if you just want to get as much cash flow as quick as possible and quit your job, you can do that. But that is, to your point, that may not be, if your goal is long-term wealth and building equity, that may not be the right path for you.
Yeah, and that's just really stresses the importance of when you get into this game, it's okay to change your lane,
Yep.
but whatever your lane is, define it so that you can do a good job performing in that. And then as you graduate into bigger asset classes or different ones, or decide to pivot, or just simply add another, one, you're just doing the best job you can. I think it's important, and education's a big piece of that. So, because things are always changing, so it's important to kind of stay abreast of market trends and just things that are happening. So that's our job as investors. We have to stay in tune with that stuff. So next question here. Why don't you, since you're a new member of GoBundance, have you been a part of any other coaching programs or communities? I would like to kind of get your opinion on your philosophy of the importance of coaching or being in a community of like-minded folks.
GoBundance is kind of the first formal group like this that I've been a part of. I mean, I have people that I can call in the real estate space or otherwise, and kind of, I don't know if I'd fully call them like mentors, but people that I can call when I have questions or want to talk through whatever it may be. But this is the first thing like this that I've done in kind of a formal setting. And that, you asked about goals last year, or I'm sorry, goals on one of your previous questions for 2025, and that's one of my big goals. And one of the things I realized is I have some employees and stuff, but they're kind of located all over the place and in Oregon, and it's I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate. It can be a little lonely at times being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it's hard. One of the big reasons I joined this group is to have that kind of accountability group that I can go to and share goals with and talk about our business, and that will really hold each other accountable. I mean, you can try to create those groups with buddies and stuff like that, but it just doesn't work. And one of the, I'm new here, but one of the great things about GoBundance, I think, I mean, it's not cheap to join. Like if you're joining this thing, you're pretty serious about it, and you really value what's being brought to the table. So I think, it's hard to say because what is today, the 10th? I'm 9 days into being a member here, but I'm really, I'm really, really excited about that aspect of it, because it's fun to have business successes and everything, but it's a lot more fun when you can share them with other people and bounce ideas off each other and help each other grow.
I agree with that, man. I think it's about being in the right room with the right people and
Yep.
being in, if you're in rooms with people who, your dreams is their reality, the chances of those happening is a lot more likely because, the circle that you have now are probably awesome people, but, the chances of them helping you buy a 30 unit might be, you might have to get lucky. Whereas now in this community or any community for that matter, there's guys that buying a 30 unit, they can save you probably years of headache and a ton of money telling you exactly what they did because there's probably a lot of guys in here that have gone through that same exact process. So, paying for that access to that expertise, I think was worth every penny to help compress time. So, I'm glad you're part of the group now. So, I think it'll definitely pay dividends, dude.
I think so.
So how about this? Let's go to my next question. Obviously, you were big into bigger pockets because that kind of sounds like that was a launch pad for you as far as education. What are 3 of your favorite books or podcasts that you think people should tune into and check out, pay attention to if they want to kind of follow in your footsteps?
Hmm. So yeah, I started off, I think like a lot of people when COVID hit, and I told you guys I was buying, first started buying deals. I probably went back and listened to legitimately like 200 of those Bigger Pockets
Yeah.
podcasts. I couldn't get enough of it. These days I don't listen as much to that. So during that time, also, for you asked about books, I was doing pretty much all my reading was like self-help, finance, real estate. Of course, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everyone else does.
Mhm.
I read just anything I could get my hands on. These days, I love to read. In fact, my business is like I said is on the West Coast, so I don't really, I'll get up and do some emails and stuff, but I don't. I kind of when I started out, I realized I was probably bugging the hell out of all my employees because I'd get up at 7 and I'd be sending them stuff, and I'm like, and I was like, wait, how annoying is this that you're waking, whatever time they're waking up at? Like, Matt,
Yeah,
you sent me a
4 in the
text
morning back there.
4 in the morning. So I
Yeah.
actually I start off every day here in New York. I go to my little coffee shop and read a book. I do a ton of these. I read all nonfiction. I do more reading for entertainment now. I
Mhm.
kind of as opposed, I'll still read like self-help type stuff, but I love nonfiction. I just finished Eric Larson book. He's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
It just finished In the Garden of the Beast. Actually reading this brand new Bernie Madoff book that just came out. I'm sure most of you guys know
How
about.
how did he write a book? Isn't he
Oh
in
no,
North
so
Carolina behind bars?
yeah, he didn't write it.
All right.
It's really interesting. The premise is the guy who wrote it actually, because he passed away. Madoff passed away a few years ago, and there was all these journalists always trying to get access to him, and this was the one guy who did. So I'm reading that. I'm also reading. It's on my desk right now. I've been trying to get a lot better at writing. I started a blog at the beginning of 24 that I publish once a week. And
Yeah.
I've been reading this one. It's called Draft Number Four by John McPhee. He wrote for The New Yorker, and he's a really, really amazing nonfiction writer. So I've been reading that as well. And then podcast wise, I listen to a ton of business stuff.
Mhm.
Love the Prof G pod. I listen to some history podcasts. Sports, but I love sports. We haven't even talked about that. But
Oh yeah.
listen, Ryan Russillo show. That's my favorite sports podcast. But yeah, I love reading, love learning, love listening to pods, love writing, all that stuff.
That's awesome, dude. You are the Renaissance man, right?
Working on it.
That's what I wrote down on my little notes here. I wrote Renaissance man up there. I was like, this is it. This is the journey into real estate, and not a lot of people read anymore, dude. It's everyone's Audible or podcast, so it's cool. I'm a big fan of the written word as well. So I've got a collection stacking up. I need to pay more attention to. But yeah, tell us about your blog. It looks the Saucetown Investor, and I had a note to ask you what's the Saucetown deal? What's that all about?
Everyone asks me that one as they should. It's
Yeah.
a so Saucetown it's pretty simple. It's a nickname for Salem, Oregon. In high school, there was this hip hop group from Salem, Oregon, if you can believe that, hip hop capital of the world, Salem, Oregon,
Yeah.
called called 684. But they coined the term Saucetown, and we just took it and ran with it. And people my age, we all call it Saucetown or the Sauce. And I was just like, once if I start a company, it's gonna have Saucetown in the name. So
I
that's
love it, dude.
that's it. As far as my blog, I actually one of my we were talking about goals. One of my commitments I made last year, entering 2024, was that I was going to publish a blog a minimum one time a week. And I take writing classes here in the city. I got shout out to Gotham Writers Club. I'm actually starting a new class with them on Tuesday.
Nice.
But yeah, I've made a commitment to publish that once a week. It comes out on Fridays. I write about a variety of things. I should probably hone it. I always read that, if you want your blog to do well, you should pick one kind of lane to stay in. But I write about um, finance, history, current events, self-help, all kinds of variety of topics on there. But I love it. I publish it every Friday. Try to make it fairly, 5 to 10 minute read for people.
Uh,
Um, yeah, just try to put one of those out, the minimum one of those out into the world every week.
I love it, man. That's awesome. And I love that you made that commitment to yourself too, to do that and to be consistent about it. Because I think that that's one of those things, like a podcast or a blog or like anything really, just the more reps you get in, the more you do it, um, the longer you stay in the game, the more dividends will pay. And sometimes a lot of this content is evergreen. So in 5 years, man, someone could read it and get a lot from it. And I think that's really cool. So um, tell me about if someone's listening to the show, who are you best suited to be helping right now? Like who can you offer the most advice to? Who could you help? You've got an amazing portfolio, 35 units, $9 million. You're definitely going to be on to bigger things and be a heavy hitter in the multifamily space. You've got an awesome life hack figured out where you basically get 3 hours ahead of everybody else in your world. So I love that. But Roy Vaden, Ed Milet, these guys always say like you're best suited to help the previous version of yourself. So who is that person so that they can really tune in?
I think I can help people who want to get into the real estate space. I've been there. I'm at 35 units. I'm not so far. If you're a beginner, I'm not so far off in another stratosphere from you. I know guys and gals that own. I was on a podcast last week with a guy who owns 1,500 units, and he helps me. And I think that's a great thing about this business, real estate. I mean, there's jerks in it like everywhere else, but I think for the most part, people are very open and genuinely want to help each other. So I can help people who, if you want to buy your first building, I can help you with that. Or buy your first single family home, I can help you with that. Or if you're somebody who, even if it's not real estate related, if you
Mhm.
just want to start a business, I've learned so much, particularly in the last 5 years, but particularly since I quit my corporate job.
Mhm.
The amount I have learned and the amount of things I've done wrong and the amount of things I've done right and taken from all those experiences, it's pretty large. So anybody, of course, that's what's been fun actually. I've gotten to the point where I have buddies or even just people in my periphery that are reaching out to me on Instagram or, hey, I saw what you're doing. I want to buy a duplex or whatever. That stuff, it brings me so much joy. I want everybody to win.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, it makes me very happy.
That's great, man. I think that's the right attitude. It's a great mindset to be in. I mean, you're right. There's just like any industry, there's jerks and there's folks that are out there just for themselves. But I think this is a path, man, that like, it's not your path. You're on this real estate path. And so to help people, to shepherd them or help them or give them advice so they can not step where you may have stepped I think it's our responsibility as like just good people, man. You gotta, if you see someone, a lot of people want to get into this business. And so to offer that advice is wise, and I think it's the right thing to do. And there's more than enough for everybody. That's the thing. There's no, if you're of a scarcity mindset in this business, I think you won't go nearly as far as you could. If you're in an abundance mindset, there's more real estate out here than we know what to do with. There's plenty of opportunity, and there's a
That's
thousand different ways.
the entire premise of Go Abundance, right? Like that's why the point there's nobody, we're not like, oh, this is my trade secret, or I can't share this because you might take this off my plate. The point is, like you said, Chris, the plate's big enough for everybody to eat at. There is so much opportunity out there, and everybody, that wants to put in the work and get a piece of it. And I think it's just cool that there is space. That's the entire point of American capitalism, is that there is space for everybody and it's not a zero sum game. We can all help each other.
Totally, man. That's it. I love it. That's beautiful. Awesome, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. I think you've offered a lot of nuggets and wisdom to our audience. Um, tell us, tell us a little bit about where we can find you, how they can reach out to you, subscribe to your blog, and any kind of final thoughts you want to leave with the audience. Any last nuggets?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my blog, it would mean the world to me if you subscribe. It's free. I don't hit you with ads or anything. I just like, and I love when people, today I just published one. I get people emailing me, texting me, agreeing, disagreeing with it. I love when people reach out and comment on them.
Uh,
It is, uh, Matt Cox, Mattcox 444.substack.com. You can also DM me on Instagram. It's the real Matt Cox 4, the number 4. And then my business Instagram is at Saucetown Properties. As far as a final nugget to leave you with, if you read any of my stuff or talk to me, like a constant theme is that action is the highest form of intelligence. If it's it's the start of 2025. If you've been debating, taking that step, buying your first deal, starting that business, moving to that new city, whatever it is, like get out of the analysis phase and do it. Accept that not everything's going to go right. You're going to make mistakes, and that's all going to be okay. And that's all part of the process. But don't look back at the end of 25 and say, hey, and be in a place where you're setting the exact same goal for 2026 because you didn't do anything with it this year.
I love it, dude. Default to action. Get out of your own way. That's the
Yep.
that's the moral of the story, man. That's kind of my phrase for the year is default to action. Same thing, man. Analysis paralysis is a sickness. You got to do your homework, but at the end of the day, man, you gotta set a deadline. You gotta stick to it. Hold yourself accountable to it, and that's it, man. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time at the next episode of the Build Better Blueprint. Thanks again to Matt Cox, and make sure you subscribe to his blog and check him out on Instagram, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.
That's it, folks. That's our show. Thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel so you are up to date with the latest episodes. Feel free to share with your friends and keep up the great work. You are on the right path. See you at the top.